Rowen Ravera-Bauer, Strategic Partnership Development Manager for U-Turn. Rowen, thank you very much indeed for coming on.
Morning. Thank you for having me on the show, and thank you for covering this issue, because it's an issue that affects everyone. It's not just the people on the street affected, but our entire society is affected by this issue. So well done for covering it.
You know, I think it's so important because I'm not sure if you heard the last two interviews, Jan and Mpho. Jan was talking about people, the quickness to judge them and the quickness to brand people on the streets as social pariahs. You find that a common problem?
Yeah, I mean, U-Turn always sees themselves as being a bridge between the two sides, because there's very much a division. And we really try and see both sides of the equation. People, I think, are very frustrated by homelessness in their cities. In Cape Town, we had a very tongue-in-cheek campaign where we said homelessness has been cancelled, World Homeless Day has been cancelled. There's not 6,000 people who are homeless on the streets of Cape Town. There is not over 4,000 people sleeping on benches and under bridges. And of course, it's completely tongue-in-cheek. There is a very visible problem with homelessness in the city. So we sympathize with the residents' frustrations. And at the same time, we sympathize with the plight of the individuals who find themselves stranded on the street, because society's really been structured for short-term solutions. So traditionally, we approached homelessness with a welfare short-term relief, a cup of soup and a blanket approach. And of course, the problem with that is that the numbers increase and no one is helped by that situation. It relieves the suffering for a day, but doesn't change the situation. And so U-Turn is really invested, and has been prior to COVID-19, invested in asking for society to look at long-term solutions. And that long-term solution means taking someone from on the street, basic needs, food, clothing, doing change readiness work while they're accessing that food and clothing. In that process, getting them ready for the next step of the journey, which is drug and alcohol rehabilitation for the majority of people. And once they come out of drug and alcohol rehabilitation, a lot of programs just end there. They just stop.
Yeah.
And of course, it's not great, because you have a 60% relapse rate. So while U-Turn's got an 80% success rate for successful rehabilitation, if we just stop there, 60% of those people would fall off the wagon.
Right.
Which is a huge waste of resources. And, you know, the person might never, ever climb back on that wagon again. That might be it for them. So you have a responsibility to hold the person. And so the core and heart of U-Turn is called the Life Change Program. It's after drug and alcohol rehab. It's sheltered employment, so you're earning your living costs. It's skill development. It's an on-the-job learnership. And there's things like computer literacy programs. There's basic literacy. A lot of the people on the street can't read.
Yes.
And all of these things to ensure that when the person is ready to graduate, they're going to fly and they're going to be resilient.
Right.
And we check in 6 months later. 80% of the guys who graduate from the program remain sober, remain employed. And that's an important thing to track. We've all got a responsibility to start thinking in that way.
I guess your kind of thinking is rooted in the verse, give a man or woman a fish and he'll eat for a day. Teach him or her how to fish, and he'll eat for a lifetime. So it's a holistic approach that you are you are focusing on. Talk to us about, and we heard from our last guest that Palesa was talking to, Mpho, in terms of rehabilitation, in terms of relapse prevention. Talk to us about that issue. How often do people relapse, and what is being done to bring them back into the fold?
So it's an interesting, you're bringing in Christian analogies, and so U-Turn is a Christian organization, although lots of people don't realize it, we're not evangelical. But I want to bring up another metaphor for you that I think is really useful. We also talk in Christianity about all of us being part of one body. So you have someone who's the hand, someone who's the foot. We've all got a role to play in this body. And in some ways, this is an analogy in lots of cultures. It's the meaning of Ubuntu. We all rely on each other. And so the story of Mpho really is meaningful for me, because he's got this world of potential and it's being wasted on the streets. It's something we see again and again. I want to tell you about a gentleman called Malikale, or Max, who came through our program. He had a grade 10 education. He'd been a parking attendant for over 12 years and had been struggling for addiction longer than that. he came through our program, went on, did his LLB through UNISA, passed his first year cum laude, all first, and he's currently completing articles at a law firm in Cape Town. We have enormous wasted resources on our streets. We've got a world of potential wasted on the side of on our sidewalks, and it's in part because of this culture of throwing R5 at someone. You see someone and you throw R5 at them, you think that's all they're worth. And so what U-Turn does is when we meet with people, we really work hard to restore their dignity, to restore their sense of potential. A lot of our final phase champions, as we call them, work in the first phase area where they wear bright green T-shirts. The guys coming in off the street see them, and they're like a lighthouse. They see them, they know they come from the same place they came from. They've got the same story, but they're flourishing. And it really helps to push them in that direction. It's really about opening people's eyes to potential and breaking this terrible cycle, the cycle of short-term solutions and quick numbers. So many cups of soup, so many people helped. You haven't helped anyone with a cup of soup. And so I'm seeing it now where society is shifting into realizing it needs to be a comprehensive program. You need to follow through. You need to track things. We see it in the city of Cape Town too. So 22 years later, U-Turn's about 22 years old now. 22 years later, the city of Cape Town is finally funding us for a pilot project in Mitchell's Plain. We've got a councillor on board, Councillor Badruddin, who's really starting to wake up to the importance of long-term solutions. And this is a shift that we need to see happening. That long-term solution means taking Umpo, putting him into a long-term program. It's not a month, it's not 2 months, it's more like 18 months to 24 months, where he has time to come and discover his potential, to get clean as a first most important thing, and then to be in this holding life change program where he is able to work, and through the course of that start to do things like repair ties with his family, repair ties with society around them. A lot of the guys who are on the street have very complex issues around anger management and trust issues, and there's a lot of repair work that needs to be done, a lot of trauma. And so in those 2 years, we really work hard to get them stable, and we track everything because we want to make sure resources are being well spent, which is why we follow up 6 months after graduation. And the only way you graduate from U-Turn, the only way we'll put a hat on your head is when you're ready, with consultation from your therapist. You have to look for a job, you have to apply for that job, and you have to secure that job independently.
You know, and
it means that once you fly...
No, I get.
Sorry, say that again.
I get where you're coming from in terms of your organization, and it's doing a remarkable job in terms of taking this holistic approach. What do you say to people? You know, something that jumped out at me when you say, you know, it's not good enough to just throw money at someone. Let's give you an example, practical example. I pass on my way home from the SABC about 10 to 15 people begging on the street on the route. Well, yeah, and some people will say, don't give them any money because it keeps them on the street. Others say, if you have, give them. You and I, what do you say to people like you and I who are lucky enough to have that R5 to give to another person? Is it a good idea to do that, or is there other ways that we can help?
So it's a tough one. If there isn't any other alternative close by, people need help. So if you have no other alternative, then that R5 could help someone survive for the day. And we felt it during lockdown at U-Turn. We had to really shift to much more of an emergency relief approach with our work. We're now back into developmental mode. If there's no other alternative, you have to keep people alive. So it's not a case of just refusing people. But if there is a solution in your city, I know up in Victoria, there's Chwani Leadership Foundation, which does really great work, really long-term rehabilitative work. Support the organization that is really looking to the long term. In Cape Town, U-Turn has vouchers. So people can buy vouchers. They go to homeless.org.za/vouchers. Very easy to access those vouchers. We'll post them to you. And when you get to the traffic light, instead of giving the person R5, you give them a voucher. That voucher gets taken to our service center where they can get food and clothing. But then most importantly, it's not just a feeding scheme. They get food and clothing, and they do change readiness modules, and it starts them on that pathway to employment. If you can motivate...
What about funding for you? You find it difficult to get funding for your organization and organizations like yours in terms of helping those out there?
Yeah, it's never easy. And look, everyone's struggling at the moment, so it's not easy for anyone. But U-Turn's program is particularly, it's not a cup of soup. We're paying stipends and wages to individuals on our program. There's a lot of therapy that goes into it, a lot of skills development.
Yeah.
It's not a cup of soup. So cups of soup are cheap. They're quick and fast. So we have to be creative. U-Turn tries to raise a lot of its income by itself through social enterprises. So people can donate clothing and bric-a-brac. We sell them through the charity shops, and the charity shops double as training grounds. So everyone in the shop is formerly homeless. Everyone in the shop is been through our program, and that's the space where we give sheltered employment. It's being clever about how you use your resources and stewarding your resources. We've all been blessed with really, wonderful gifts, and those gifts we should share. It comes back to that whole idea of being part of one body, that if we can think about the fact that if one person suffers, we all suffer, that if we are able to uplift the whole of our community and society, all benefits. So if you've got resources, use them wisely. Yeah. Invest in organizations that are having a long-term program, that are using, cyclical economies. So don't just throw things away, put it into good use. And then if you are going to put direct funding into an organization, research it. Check it out. Has it got a long-term result? Is there an impact that goes beyond a cup of soup for one day? What's it doing in the long term?
It's Ubuntu, isn't it? And it goes beyond what we talk about with regards to a person that is homeless. It talks about COVID-19 as well, in terms of using a mask and protecting others by using a mask. So, it translates to all these different facets of our lives as well, in terms of being our brothers and sisters keeper as well. Rowen, we thank you very much indeed for your time. Great insight, great perspective in terms of this holistic approach and making a huge difference in the lives of those who are suffering out there. Appreciate your time. God bless you. Goodbye.
God bless you. Bye.
All right. That was Rowen Ravera-Bauer, Strategic Partnership Development Manager at U-Turn. Let's take you now to Cape